VitusSpeakz.
And, ladies and gentlemen, please help me again welcome my guest for the plug on this morning's AM Club show, VitusSpeakz. My goodness, there was a lot of things you were saying there, and I wanted to chip in, but I couldn't because, and now I'm trying to remember, the words were just intricately woven. You know what?
Thank you.
Let me remind our viewers that it's World Poetry Day today, and the United Nations adopted the World Poetry Day in 1999 in Paris with the aim of supporting linguistic diversity through poetic expressions and also giving opportunity to languages that are endangered to be heard. So it's exciting to hear Vitus speak. And you said something. You said, we're going to judge your life's book by another book. Is that what you said?
Yes, and we bring that book to judge you by.
Oh, my goodness. So let's talk about poetry. It's just an amazing art form, and I want to know how long you've been doing this?
I've been doing this for about 8 years.
8 years?
Yes.
And at what point did you think or felt like it's something I want to venture into?
Okay, so I started doing poetry somewhere in high school. I discovered the arts through social media at the time, and I fell in love with it. I felt that was something I could relate with, and so I started doing it as a hobby. But along the line, I felt like there was something greater to it for me. That was somewhere in the university where I felt like I could actually build a career around this because I love it, and I felt like this is an instrument that I could use to make impact in the world.
And you are one of the known names when it comes to poetry in this country.
Thank
You're
you.
such an amazing poet. Let me ask, what is your process like?
My creative process?
Yes, what's your creative process like?
So basically, I get the topics I write about from anything and everything around me. I'm a person that loves to talk. I love to share my ideas, my insights. And so the various things that happen in and around influence the pieces that I write. And so sometimes I can get an idea from maybe my everyday activities to write on a particular subject, and so I'll do the research on it. I'll first have to go do research and then have what exactly I want to talk about, and then I'll determine what style I want it to take, because sometimes you can have a message, but if it's not well expressed, it doesn't make the maximum impact. And so what style I want it to take, and then I think I spend most time in thinking about it than actually writing it down. The writing process is just the final bit of it. So it's in thinking about it, the creative process of how this thing will be delivered, and I picture the audience and all of that. I do all of that in my mind, and at the end of the day, I just have to pen that down.
You know, last week I spoke with a poet, and he said that poets are disappointed rappers. do you believe that?
Well,
Did you ever wanted to rap?
not for all of us, though.
Did you ever wanted to rap at all?
No. I love music, though, but I never wanted to pursue a rap career. No.
So, Vitus, what does poetry mean to you as a person?
So, borrowing the words of Amanda Gorman, she said something that I so agree with, that poetry represents or acts as a representation of the past that we stand on and the future that we stand for. Poetry for me is an instrument of expression, because with the art of poetry, I can make a very simple thing sound more complicated, or a very complex thing sound much simpler. So I have control over my audience as I deliver. One thing I love to see is my audience move through different facial expressions and emotions and all of that as I deliver. And so for me, it's an instrument. It's an instrument of change. It's an instrument of impact. It can cause me to drive my audience from one emotional state to another. And that gives me a sense of fulfillment.
And that kind of imbibes in me, or it kind of reminds me of acting as an art form, or even comedy.
Exactly.
As an art
Every
form.
art form, exactly.
It's so powerful.
Powerful as a tool.
You know? And so what do you make of poetry in Ghana so far?
So far, I'd say it's growing. Every art form that has gained prominence and relevance in Ghana started from somewhere. We were speaking of rap just a few minutes ago. Rap music some years ago was not as renowned as it is now, and it took the hard work of some. So poetry is not where it ought to be, but it's growing. Over the years, we've moved from various spaces to be where we are now. Now poetry is being recognized on various stages, various events, corporate events, churches, various platforms, and that is growth. So we've come from far, we've come somewhere, and we are still pushing it further.
How challenging is it for you?
Well, it is, because there are a lot of stereotypes around the arts. Myself, even before I ventured...
Stereotypes?
Yes.
For spoken word?
Yes.
Tell me about it.
So, like I'll say myself, before I entered into the art, I felt this is a boring art.
Right.
Yes, but after listening to a few artists, I realized that no, I have certain, mindsets about the arts that I don't know where it came from, but there are a lot of people that have these mindsets. They may not have experienced poetry the way I have or the way they should have, but they have certain mindsets concerning the arts. And so, if given the opportunity, we can change those mindsets for them. So, being able to break those biases has been a challenge sometimes.
That's a good one. I like the punchline, breaking the bias. And would you say poetry is a lucrative art form here?
Yeah, it's growing. I'll say it's growing in its returns. It's not where it ought to be, but it's growing in its returns. And also the poets are also working. We are refusing to accept mediocrity, and so we are pushing the envelope.
Can we live off poetry?
There are a lot of artists doing that. There are a lot of poets that do poetry full-time. I don't do poetry full-time, but there are a lot of poets in Ghana that do poetry full-time and are able to live a comfortable life.
I know Negro True. Is it Negro True? There's this poet called Negro True.
Okay.
There's VitusSpeakz.
Yeah.
There's who are your influences when it comes to poetry?
So VitusSpeakz has been one great influence. Prince EA has been another great influence, and that's on the international front. VitusSpeakz was actually one of the first poets I came into contact with, and then others like Jefferson Beth, Prince EA, and a host of others. And so they greatly shaped my pattern, the pattern that I took in terms of poetry.
Vitus, how can we use poetry, your art form, something I can see you're very passionate about, for natural transformation?
Okay, so like I said before, that poetry is a thing of expression. Sometimes I find it amazing how people could doze off in especially the youth, could doze off maybe in a talk, representation or something, but their ears perk up when a poet is delivering a piece. And so it's easy to have the attention once you are using the art. That's the beauty of art anyway. And so what we can do is to leverage of that power that art has, the power that art wields, to put whatever messages of change that we want to spread across. Because sometimes the messages that the politicians want to get across, the messages that the preachers want to get across, that are finding it difficult to do, we can leverage off the power of art, the power that art wields, whether comedy, including poetry, to pass that message across, and they'll give us their attention.
Whew. Now, if you could change anything in poetry in this country when it comes to spoken word, the spoken word industry in Ghana, what would it be?
I'll change the fact that...
Will it be breaking the bias like you said earlier?
Well, that as well. But I'll change the fact that poetry is treated as an occasional art, in the sense that poetry is the bias is like it's given certain spaces in which it can operate in, and other spaces we don't see poetry to be fit enough for certain stages. I think if given the opportunity, there are so many things we can do with the art. Irrespective of the platform, irrespective of the spaces, we can push poetry into the spaces that we least expect.
Vitus, in my intro, I did say that one of the main purposes of the United Nations adopting the World Poetry Day was to support linguistic diversity and to also create opportunities for endangered languages to be heard. But one thing I've noticed when it comes to spoken word in this country is just a handful of people who are doing it in the local dialect. What do you make of that?
So, like you rightly said, that's true. Well, I wouldn't say a handful. There are quite a lot of people, actually. But the thing is, for you to do poetry is, like I said, it's a thing of expression. Expression of language. So you need to have mastery of the language to be able to do poetry in a certain language. I happen to have mastery, a certain level of fluency in the English language. And so that would be my most comfortable point of expression. But for others that have control over the local language, I love what they do, and I think we should see more of that. There are a lot of artists that actually do that, but I think it's a great avenue to project our languages, our culture to the world on the international front.
Well, can you dare try it in a local language? What other language are you fluent in?
Maybe a bit of Tree.
You speak. What tribe are you?
I'm from the north.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow, but you can't speak your language.
Not fluent.
It's okay. We have to get on this one. I can't speak it well too.
So what I sometimes do is I drop a few lines in various languages in there, but I can't do a whole piece, at least not yet, in a local dialect.
Spoken word is becoming very innovative, and I see a lot of collaborations with other art forms, movies, music. I see that happening a lot. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I think that is one way by which we can push the art into different spaces. Yeah, a lot of musicians now, most of their intros for their albums would probably be
the highest album had that with VitusSpeakz, yeah.
With VitusSpeakz on it. I think a Copper's album has a lot of other musicians are putting spoken word in there, and so I think we should push it more. And that is the way we can connect to different audiences, because certain people may love a certain art form. And like I said, they probably did not know that they could fall in love with poetry until we push it there. So if we're able to push spoken word poetry into movies, into other art forms, the lovers of those art forms will be able to recognize that, well, this is something that I can actually listen to. This is something that I could actually have a playlist on my phone of poets and listen to them. And so we need to continue that.
Is there any artist you'd like to work with?
Whoa. Definitely would love to do something with VitusSpeakz. I mean, someone who...
That would be big.
Yes, that would be huge. And I'll definitely love to do something with VitusSpeakz. I don't see why not.
Well, from your lips to God's ears, I'm sure it's going to happen pretty soon. But do you want to leave us with some last words?
Okay, so what I'll say is that people should keep supporting the arts. Like I've said, that there are different forms of poetry. Don't just be limited to what you've heard. Try and just take time out and search. Like the Ghanaian poets, they are amazing crop of new artists that are doing amazing with the art. You may just fall in love with the art. So just take time off to come and see what we are doing. Tonight, we have the Ghana Poetry Association is putting together an event where we have a host of poets passing through to deliver pieces. It's a free event. It's happening at Powerhouse. If you're free, just come out and just listen and enjoy the beautiful art.
Where is Powerhouse?
It's at Ridge, North Ridge.
North Ridge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Opposite Accra Girls.
Right. Oh, great. I think I'll try and make it
Definitely.
to that. But I have a question here for you. It says, what is the title of his poem? Please, I'm linking inside Akimodan Manso.
The poem I delivered?
You just delivered.
Okay, so that poem is titled The Movement. The Movement. So you can check it out on my YouTube.
Movement.
YouTube.
And in all your words, which one would you say is your favorite?
My favorite, I think, is a piece I did on Africa. I called it, the title is quite controversial. Africans complain too much about slavery.
Africans complain too much about slavery. You'll be surprised that I share your sentiment. So you're going to leave us with that piece.
Okay.
But to follow you, where do we go to on social media?
Okay, so across all social media, the handle is VitusSpeakz. VitusSpeakz. It's one word, and it's with a Z, not an S. So VitusSpeakz across all social media. And then the website is VitusSpeakz.com. And then my YouTube is also VitusSpeakz. That's the channel.
Okay, so before we even let you perform, I understand we have... Okay, but well, so you're going to leave us with that poem. You said
Africans complain too much about slavery.
African complains too much about slavery. Wait, before you even tell us why that poem?
Well, I think if I talk about it, I'll give too much away.
something must have sparked it. Like,
well, yes.
You're tired of the system.
I don't want to give too much away, but I'd say what sparked it is a lot of talk about certain things that we can't change about our history, but we can change about certain things that we can do about our present, which we are not doing, but we are still dwelling on the past.
On the past.
And so that is what sparked that piece.
Vitus, please, take us away.
All right. Well, I came to shake some African tables because someone has to hear something. See, this piece might offend many, but who's counting? I think you Africans complain too much about slavery. I'm just saying. First off, whose fault was it? No, wait, I don't seek to make light of the effect of those dark years on the African continent, but reason with me. If you spend too much time complaining about how you were enslaved in the past, you may actually be blinded to the modern ways in which you're still being enslaved. For instance, how slavery of the past was physical, but now it's mental. Like how I can make you think that my products are better than anything your country can ever produce, and so you haven't really got it until you import mine. Like how I can make you think that all your heroes are villains and my heroes will soon come to rescue your land after they are done rescuing mine. Like how Alexander the Great is described as a conqueror for conquering, but Shaka Zulu is labeled a bloodthirsty barbarian for doing the exact same thing. Like how your queen mothers are localized, but our queen is globalized. Like how Spider-Man is called a superhero, but Kwekwanans is called a superstition. Like how I can make you think that every aspect of your culture is primitive and every aspect of mine is called modernization. Like how Jigbadi is not a cool name to give to your child, but once you call her Patience, she can move mountains. Like how I can make you think that you aren't really married until you have a white wedding. Like how I can make you think that you need my engineers to erect your mega structures, but since you can't afford them, you need my loans to pay them. Africa, wake up. How long until you realize that we never really ended slavery? We rebranded it. And while you were busily lamenting on the effect of the transatlantic slave trade, see, we found a new way to do it. How's that for smart? Now that's strategy. From physical slavery to mental slavery. Well, guess what's next? Spiritual slavery. But you all ain't ready for that conversation. So let's leave that for another day. For in the words of James Bowen, God gave Noah the rainbow as a sign that there'll be no more rain. Because it's going to be fire next time. Thank you.
Ah, goodness gracious. Okay. Ooh. Ah, stimulating words. In the words of who, Bowie?
James Bowen.
James Bowen. Bowen.
Yeah.
Say that again.
So in the words of James Bowen, God gave Noah the rainbow as a sign that there would be no more rain. Because it's going to be fire.
Gonna be, and that's what the Bible says. It's going to be fireworks. That's fire and brimstones. Wow, that is very powerful. Spiritual slavery is the next level, but we are not ready for that conversation, are
Not
we?
at all.
Oh, my goodness. You know what? We are not going to let you go just yet.
Okay.
Because we have another poet
Okay.
online and we want to speak with him. Hello, 100%.
How you doing?
Hey, good morning. How are you?
We
We day here like that. It's AM Club. Welcome to the AM Club. And I have Vitus here with me, but we are celebrating World Poetry Day. Such an amazing day, I must say. Do you know before now? I didn't know there was a World Poetry Day.
Really?
So, how are you celebrating World Poetry Day? 100%.
Well, I think, as you can see, Vitus, a big shout out to Vitus. We are really moving around as poets, different media establishments to share, emphasize on the importance of poetry. So that's really what's happening the whole day. In fact, in the evening we'll be commemorating this with an evening at Powerhouse of Poetry. That'll be from 6:30 going, and that is with the Poetry Association of Ghana in partnership with Ghana Association of Writers.
100%. Is it okay to ask you how poetry has contributed to your life personally?
I think since that's a funny question because my mind just creatively goes to the fact that I am sure poetry was utilized in all of us being born. I'm sure our fathers and our mothers spoke some form of poetry to each other, and we ended up being born in one way. But that's a light way of looking at it. But for me, I've been doing poetry for like 20 years now, and I do it professionally now. I see it as a medium that helps me on different dimensions, and from a healing perspective as an uplifting piece of art, and also entertainment. So poetry is multifaceted. So and for me, I like saying that now. Like when I was thinking about the questions, like why is even poetry important? I realized that this is a craft that I use to hold memory. You know, with a poem, you're able to jump back in time, jump into the future, see certain things, smell. It activates the senses like no other and helps you to treasure memories. So that's why I'll say poetry is important and what poetry has done for me over the years.
Indeed, and for me, I like to know what makes up a person, and we are made up of lots of influences. So who are your influences?
Oh, my influence, I mean, for me starting, it was Saul Williams. Saul Williams is an American spoken word artist and poet. I saw him in a movie earlier on, and he really tickled my mind on poetry. And also, I'll say Stu GT. He used to be known as Stumi, and he's an essay-based rapper. But he started out where there's a particular poem he has, Yvonne, which really got me saying I want to do spoken word. As well, we've got within our circles here You've got from Nana Sasirai, Sunny, Emma, Pioko. Each of them inspire me in different ways. Maybe not particularly in the same craft that I'm in, but the subject matter and the things that they talk about definitely move me into a direction whereby I'm like, look, I want to be a better version of myself as a poet.
The interesting thing is that in hearing about your influences, I don't hear some old Ghanaian name in there. Is it because our old poets were not that influential, were not that strong? Because if you go to Nigeria, you find lots of people, but over here, I don't hear lots of poets being named among the poets, honestly.
No, you're right, and it's not because of any. I mean, unfortunately, with the schooling that I did, and I was reading Robert Frost and Pablo Neruda. That's what we're doing in literature. Unfortunately, for the schools I went to, I was not exposed to the poets of old, and that doesn't. So if I'm being true to what brought me to poetry, unfortunately, it wasn't these great names. That doesn't mean that they are not. That doesn't mean they are not great, because my influences are what make me produce the kind of art I produce. So you'd realize with some of the other poets, their influences are some of these great people, and you can tell from the poetry that they produce that they are influenced by these great names. But then again, it doesn't make them any less. You understand me? It's just that it's a big bowl of soup of different flavors in it.
Oh my goodness! Let me read some few comments that have come in for you guys. This one says, I'm also a poet. What's his name again? Well, the guy in studio is VitusSpeakz, and then we have 100% over the phone. This one says, the title of his poem is Tales of a Dreamer. So he shares a poem here. I don't have time to read it out. I'd love to read it, my brother, but I don't have time to read it right now. This one says, please, can you ask him if he can write for rappers? That's Odum Junior from Accra. You need a ghostwriter. Do you, Vitus, do you write? Can you write for rappers?
I have written for a few rappers. I wouldn't name names, but yes, I do write for rappers as well. But I at the end, the composition will have to be done by the rapper.
Right. And let me announce that we have Fusua, who is also a spoken word artist, joining us. You're late to the conversation, but
yes,
it's okay. How are you celebrating? We have 100% online. How are you celebrating World Spoken Word Day?
I actually just left 100, so we're coming from another spot. Today's our day, so we're roaming and chilling.
Yes, you can see.
and chilling in town. So it's been a media tour this morning, and basically that, and we're crowning it in the evening at Powerhouse with... call it a poetry exchange or a soiree, whatever you'd want to call, but we're having our time and celebrating the art form in the best way that we can tonight as well.
I'm curious to know, is there a difference between spoken word and poetry?
Well, spoken word is performance poetry. Yeah, poetry is a literary art. Spoken word is performance poetry. So it's an art that, it's performance. Yeah.
Okay, but it can be used interchangeably?
Well, it depends. It depends on how it is. Yeah, but spoken word is performance poetry.
Interesting.
But I think another way to look at it is also to look at it in the strict sense of how some poetry are for the book, for the pages. Yeah. Others come alive when it takes to the stage. And some poetry sticks to a very rigid outline. It has to follow a certain meter, it has to follow a certain rhyme scheme. But spoken word allows free verses and ranges that doesn't necessarily conform in the strictest of senses to the actual structure academically to poetry. So that could also be another way to look at it.
Guess what? I just learned something new. 100%, you wanted to say something?
Yes, what I wanted to say is poetry is pretty much the umbrella. Spoken word is a subset of poetry. But Emma's definition of spoken word being more free verse, rebellious in the sense that it doesn't stick to a particular, form, stanza that is on paper. And also with performance-wise, it seems to lend itself to free speaking. So sometimes it's very difficult to tell whether the person is actually performing or the person is just freeing their mind. That's usually what is termed as spoken word. I hope that helps.
Absolutely. And while we are counting the gains and all the successes you guys have chalked in the spoken word or poetry industry. Let's talk about some of the failures, if there are any. What is the word? Have you ever frozen on stage?
Oh, it happens.
You freeze on stage.
Yeah. But I think over time we have grown in how to handle it.
Right.
Because a lot of times you don't know the piece I'm doing. I do. So I can work around it.
So you're able to be very creative about it.
About it, exactly.
What's your worst, can you encounter, I mean, how do I put this? Can you remember any worst moment ever?
I don't think I've ever frozen on stage. With my style, you can barely, you can't freeze on stage because I'm more of a freestyle poet, so I take to the stage and I create in the moment, which means that when they are done giving me what I have to work with, I quickly have to create on the spot. I dread the day that I would go blank and not know what to say. But I think for the biggest struggle has been post stage. So after I step off the stage, now I have to assess what I said on stage. Did it make sense? Was it deep enough? Did it carry the message I wanted to convey? Does it represent the values I stand for? That has always been my struggle, post stage, not really on stage. And so, yeah. Again,
I'm curious, and I think I should ask you guys. So when poetry or spoken word is sung, is this still poetry? Or when it's sung, it becomes music?
I mean, there's poetry in everything. All of life is a poem. All of life as we see it is a poem. What is poetry? It's really giving expression to our common humanity. Okay. It is putting language to the various questions on our minds, the contemplations we face daily, the fears we have as people. And as long as there's going to be a living, breathing human being on earth, there's going to be poetry.
So then it's safe to say that some music can be described as poetry.
It is, yes. It's poetry with rhythm. Music.
Just the same way some people are requesting that the poet writes a rap for him, then that's poetry. It's just that he would compose it into a rap.
Okay, now to the two of you, I think 100%. Are you still on? No, I don't think we have it. But how far is too far when it comes to spoken word? Do you think, like, it has been questioned several times that no art form should be regulated? You know, so how far would you say is too far when it comes to spoken word or poetry? Are there areas you shouldn't venture? Are there things we shouldn't say? Should they be regulated? Or people should be given the absolute and total freedom of expression when it comes to spoken word?
The truth is, I feel like arts shouldn't be limited in any way. Unlike sports that is very objective, art is purely subjective. An artist should not be limited in any way. But we live in an age where there's a lot of need to be politically correct and all of that, and that poses as a challenge for us. That's actually one of the challenges we sometimes face, having to craft your work in such a way that it is politically correct and acceptable. But art should not be limited. That obstructs the free flow of art.
So don't you think if art is not regulated to a certain extent, it could create some form of chaos? Because then, for instance, for painters or for performers, for actors, there's nudity, there is, anybody can do anything and call it art, right? So don't you think to some extent there should be some form of regulation or a cap to keep it, within the confines, or it should be let out totally?
To some extent, I lean towards freedom of speech, but I'm also very cautious of the moral conduct or the moral code or the moral fiber of our people. And so if there's any regulation, it probably should be in the upbringing of a child. We're taking it back to the basics because what I represent as a grown adult is what I would say. I can't pour from an empty wine circle. So whatever I fill myself with is what I pour out. That's how I look at my poetry. So if at the core of my being, my value system is based on preserving the moral fiber, is based on educating, is based on inspiring, then yes, definitely you would hear that most of my pieces are contained or they come in a certain form or vehicle. But the artist shouldn't be restricted to what can be said. If we're going back to the description of what I said, that it's given expression to our common humanity, then everything we experience as human beings needs to be given expression to. And so nudity in its sense, you won't take to a corporate stage and be talking bluntly.
Right.
You would find a way to say what you want to say if that is the situation or the concept you have to speak to. You would find a way to present it in a way that is palpable. and
I'm glad you say it, but that's all the time. Yes, 100%. We have to run, but you can chip in quickly so that we go.
Okay, what I just wanted to say is that the audience matters. So if you're doing something and there's an audience for it, hey, it's going to fly. But that also speaks to what the morality of the people, that's the audience and performer together. Now, if you do something and the audience is not happy with it, you stop doing it. So it's that double-edged sword issue that we see within poetry. Don't regulate it, but the audience will tell you whether it's good or not. And sometimes the audience doesn't know better, so then it speaks to society as a whole and the call it cancer that we are dealing with.
I can't wait to join you guys tonight at Powerhouse. You said the time is 6:30 p.m. and it's free. It's open to everybody.
Yes.
Come and enjoy yourselves, guys. It's a fine way to wind down and enjoy your evening. It's World Poetry Day. So is it safe to say Happy World Poetry Day?
Well, thank you.
Happy World Poetry Day. I know where to follow Vitus, but where can we follow you, Sheila?
It's at Emma Ofosua on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, and Emma_Ofosua on Twitter.
Beautiful. And 100% you?
The HONDRED 100 with HONDRED% PERCENT together on all social media platforms.
100%. That's right. Thank you, guys. Let's say a big thank you to everybody who's been part of the show today. This is where we draw down the curtains. I'd like to say a big thank you to Kevoy B for bringing us entertainment news on MX Breaks on Coffee Daily. And I also like to say a big thank you to my guest, Elike Magbasu, on Lifestyle Daily, where we discussed financial management for young entrepreneurs and low-income earners. And then on The Plug, we had a conversation with these amazing poets as we celebrate World Poetry Day. That is VitusSpeakz, Fosua, and then 100% who is with us on phone. Unfortunately, we couldn't have our Motivation Monday guest, Sheila, all the way from Uganda because she's locked up somewhere. But we'll do well to bring you that conversation. But guys, thank you so much for staying with us. It's been a fun run on the AM Club today. I miss Edma already. She's going to be here with me tomorrow, so you don't want to miss that show. Tomorrow is Travel Tuesday. Remember, this week we are celebrating the Volta region. Miokata Menao Akpe, if I'm saying it well. My name is Godwin Nambo. If you missed any parts of the show, do go to our YouTube channel at Mx24GH to subscribe, like, share, and watch what you missed on the show. But my name is Godwin Nambo. I'll catch you same time tomorrow, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. on the AM Club. Please have a beautiful day. And then we'll leave you with the performance from Ofosua. We can't go without it. Yeah, I'm not letting you go without a performance. So did I? Was it? You didn't see it coming.
I didn't see. I didn't see that coming.
No, but you won't leave us without a performance, certainly. So we'd like to hear from you. 100%. Thank you. Ready, Ofosua?
Yeah, just give me words. I think this will be my biggest challenge.
Yes, where Sheila. I keep calling you Sheila.
Yeah, I probably look like a Sheila.
No. We're supposed to host a Sheila today. Maybe that's why. Okay. Anyways, so here we go.
So this one is okay.
Vitus, moral support. Moral support.
I call this Sister by Soul. We learned to build walls and labeled them boundaries, latched onto the phrase women are their own enemies without knowing why, rode the accord in solos, never carpooling, our tunes always sounding off-key in discord because we're never in one accord. Self-made mercenaries, measuring the bond that could be in the name of pulling in accolades that we survived solo. Deep in the illusion of company, we've rubbished the need for real company and how far we can journey if we did so in unity. Once, traveling at night, I got lost in a book sitting in the passenger seat of a car, commuting with a host of imaginary guests, ignoring a real connection, lulled by the noise of the motion into an illusion of serene weightlessness. Then, The driver took a turn too fast, and I woke to see the world spinning outside the car windows. I saw nothing else, not my life's reel, not the face of any lover, not friends, not the driver. It was a prolonged period of defending silence, traveling with company, and still alone.